Okay, so I'll get started. Hello, everyone. I'm Jinhua Zhao, Professor of Cities and Transportation at MIT. Welcome to the MIT Mobility Forum, designed by the MIT Mobility Initiative. Today, John, Vulog, and I are really excited to present to you the spring 2024 season of the MIT Mobility Forum. In a minute, I'll give a little bit detail about what we have on the exciting sessions that we designed. Today's topic on car sharing. We have a really exciting panel that will share with the experience. For that, Vulog will introduce the panel and moderate the session. But before then, I want to do a few exercises. The first one is try to warm up the audience a little bit. So in the chat, I invite everybody to type in your organization, your locality, your location, and your local time. All right, so I would say MIT, Cambridge, MA, 12, no. One function of this forum, besides sharing the knowledge from the panel speaker, is for the audience to know each other. So this is really a good community. So therefore, feel free to reach out to each other, find the connection. Hopefully, we can provide that social function as well. Thank you for everybody putting your organization, location, and time in it. Right. So let me introduce this season's topics. Right. Here, we so far designed 13 sessions, right? Starting with today, talk about car sharing. Next week, we'll talk about in the electric vehicle industry, how do we prepare the labor force? How do we retrain our labor force towards this electric mobility future here? The third one, in public transit, we're talking about the physical cliff, right? So MIT have been organizing the transit research consortium with multiple agencies discussing this common challenge we face. So we're inviting Jeremy Fine from CTA and Jim and Fred from MIT to have a panel discussion on that topic. The next one will discuss the impact of building environment on quality of life. Professor Reid Ewen is really the expert on cities and health, so will join us giving his research on this topic. Next one, we've been talking quite a bit of electrification of transportation, but that really requires a lot of materials. So we invite Professor Elsa Olivetti from the Department of Material Science and Engineering from MIT, talk about the risk in the material supply chain for transportation. Next one is on safety, right? Probably many of you know that not only US safety record is not that good, we are going to the wrong direction. And distinctive from many other developed countries, US in a way is unique in the sense of going to the wrong direction, right? So for that, we really invite Professor Fred Mannering, who's really the definitive researcher on transportation safety, to give us a talk on perspective on highway safety, contemporary issues, and the forthcoming age of autonomous vehicle. Next one is talk about the latest discussion on automation as a technology, particularly what's the role of foundation models. So I'm inviting Professor Marco Pavon from Stanford University, talk about how to revolutionize AV development with those foundational models. Next one, we have Professor Samuel Madden, who's the MIT Distinguished Professor of Computing, who's also the chief scientist in the Cambridge Mobility Telematics company, to talk about his view on how do we change driver behavior to improve the road safety. Next one, we have Professor Pat Moktaran, talk about more from methodological perspective on selection bias, right? Which is a key problem that many of the transportation researchers encounter. So how to recognize them and how do we really resolve them, right? Pat, of course, is also really the founding scholar to really talk about the TEDI working, how ICT technology impacted travel behavior and its impact on future work. Next one is Deputy Secretary Polly Trottenberg from US DOT. Last term, she sent her apology that she couldn't join the panel session on the women leadership. And she said she's wanted to compensate that by offering a solo presentation to us. So she's fulfilling his commitment and joining us in April. Talk about we just have a conversation with her about various aspects of the priority of the US DOT. Then next one, we have a panel talk about technology in public transit. And for this one, specific focus on payment system and benefiting innovation. Anson Stewart, who's a research scientist at MIT and deputy director of MIT Transit Lab, organizing a panel to discuss the transit tech. Besides these three, we also have, besides this 11 session I just mentioned, there are two routine sub-series. One is on women leadership. The other one is on finance and transportation. We'll have that in May to conclude this season's mobility forum. Right. So that's for this season. I'll also give a note about the overall design of the mobility forum. So far, we've already had 95 sessions over 3 years. Right? They cover really different topics. And this season, we're adding 13 sessions to that. So we categorize them into these 5 areas. The first one is a clean, safe, and inclusive mobility, decarbonization, safety issues, and societal equity. The second one is more focused on community, policy, and cities. And the third one is on computation and behavior analytics, including control and optimization, machine learning, AI, behavior analysis, future work. And the fourth one is on the technology and system, aerial mobility, automation, public transit, shared mobility, and supply chain. And the fifth one, we're adding a new one is investment, finance, and entrepreneurship. You'll notice this classification is not a scientific one. They create an overlap to a degree, but hopefully provide some structure for you to navigate the system easily. So if you're interested in doing that, you can come to the forum website, and in here, you can filter by topic, so you can jump into the specific session in that. All right, so that's my introduction of the whole forum. Before I give the platform to Vulog, to reinforce the norms of this forum. Norm number one, in this forum, everybody contribute one idea, right? I specifically refer to the audience, not the speaker, right? As the audience, we really encourage you to add your comments and a question in the chat, right? We cannot entertain everybody talk, but in the chat, please type in your question and comments. And John, in the last 15 minutes, we'll try to curate these questions and pass to the panelists as much as we can. The second one is video on, audio off. So we have an interactive session there, right? Without further ado, let me pass the forum to Vulog to monitor the session. Vulog, please.
Thank you, Genoa. I'm taking this forum from my hometown of Hyderabad in India, and it's 10:40 p.m. here, so I'm even more grateful to all our participants who join us from Asia for all the forums. So we are extremely grateful to your loyalty in joining the forum. So anyway, with that being said, I think let's dive into the topic. Compared to pre-pandemic, prices of vehicles, prices of insurance have risen between 20 to 30%. There's a shortage of mechanics, shortage of spare parts. Electronics are getting more harder to fix. Parking minimums in many cities are being done away with. There's restrictive parking, only car share parking only zones in cities. So is this the age of reckoning, the time in which car share is going to come out of the shadows and in the cities and grow more than private cars? Or there's this paper that Genoa and a couple of others at our lab did on the value of car ownership. I'll just drop it in the chat. So the value of car ownership in the US was valued at around $11,000, and the average cost of a car was around $9,000. So people assign a little more value than the actual cost of owning a car. So, but that it's neck and neck right now because the costs are still going up. So I think this is a very, very timely panel to have. Carshare has the potential to drastically improve land use, congestion, reduce unnecessary car expenditure on private cars, and the other hassles and stresses of owning and maintaining a car. But all that being said, we all understand problems do exist, and we will delve into that in this panel and allow our panelists to tell us how they are tackling these issues, whether it be via technology, by different business models, different car types. So we have 4 panelists from across the globe in what is, I hope, is going to be a great discussion of what is going well, what needs improvement, and how car sharing can actually eventually help us in decarbonizing transportation. So I just start one by one with each of the panelists, and then we can just make it more flow as a conversation. So I'll probably start with Justin here. So Justin, hey Justin. Justin has a BA in political science, worked at the city of Boston, last as chief information officer, and has been with Zipcar for almost the last 10 years. For our audiences who are not aware of Zipcar, Zipcar is the largest car share company in the world, founded in 2000. The founder, Robin Chase, is also has joined the forum, and we'll ask her for her feedback later on today. Zipcar is now part of the Avis group. So anyway, to just kick off the discussion, Justin, I'm just going to get right into it. In my mind, and I've experienced this personally. For most of us who live in cities, during the week we get to work using public transit, bikes, walks, but all of us want the car on the weekend, right? And then suddenly everybody's booking a car, the availability is not there, the prices are going to $200 a day over the weekend, so the prices are spiking, and then your mind starts thinking, hey, a lease is $200 a month, why should I pay $200 a day to get this car, adding insurance and everything else? So, and then the use of the car during the week might not be as great as well. So how does Zipcar attain this balance of having enough supply and not allowing the prices to spike during the week, while still managing not having your car just sit idle during the rest of the week? So over to you, Justin.
That's a great question. And first, let me say thank you to the team at MIT for having me, and a shout out to Robin Chase, who, if she is on, and you don't know, as Bhavin mentioned, is our co-founder and had an incredible vision 25 years ago, if you can believe that, before there was a sharing economy, before 7 years before the iPhone was invented. To be thinking about a concept like Zipcar was incredibly visionary. So we're grateful for her leadership and inspiration that got our company going. To answer your question, I think you highlighted the research that Genoa had done, which I think highlights one of the challenges of educating consumers about the value that car sharing has in our communities, particularly in the US. I think most consumers when they think about car ownership, they think about the monthly car payment. And we know that that is only a small fraction of what it takes and what it costs to operate a vehicle overall. There's depreciation, there's maintenance, there's gas, there's or fuel, there's parking, insurance. And so the total cost of vehicle ownership is all told upwards of $10,000 or so here in the US. And so against car ownership, car sharing is an incredible value, an incredible cost saver. And what we work on at Zipcar, and I know some of my colleagues do as well, is educating consumers about when it makes sense to share a vehicle versus the high cost and hassle of owning one. And so I think we do, particularly with US consumers, have that perception to overcome that car ownership is actually quite cheap and quite affordable, when we actually know that the cost of that, especially if you're driving only a couple thousand miles a year, is incredibly high, and car sharing is much more economically advantageous for you. In terms of balancing utilization, that's something we think about a lot as a business. Our whole business is built around managing and monetizing the inefficiency of the personally owned vehicle. We know the personally owned vehicle sits idle 95% of the time, so our business is about unlocking that excess capacity. And so trying to get more members to access our vehicles, not only on the weekends, but finding those use cases, finding those business customers, finding those other usage that drives that weekday demand is important to us. And the last thing I'll say is, unlike some others in the mobility space, we don't really do surge pricing, but we do know that our pricing can fluctuate given market conditions and market factors. And it's our job, it's our responsibility to try to find ways to always make that price affordable and accessible to our wide base of consumers.
Thanks. No, that's a great answer. And I think I'm going to move on to Alexandra right now, because on the same topic of pricing and profitability as well, right? So just a quick introductions. Alexandra works at Vulog. Vulog is the world's leading shared mobility technology provider. So basically, they are the backend behind most successful shared mobility solutions in the world. And Alexandra works as the chief marketing officer there, and she holds a double master degree in political science and an MBA from ESSEC Business School. Vulog launched their own fleet of 400 plus electric and hybrid cars in Lyon in France. And so what was the logic here? So was this something like, a test bed for Vulog to test its own, y'all had this massive software platform, customers all across the world. So was the logic here to get a better understanding of how customers function, or was this just to see if this is a good, business decision in well, right? And why not just do it as well as your other customers do? This and you mentioned that y'all are on the verge of profitability. So if you could mention, add a few lines on that, and how y'all manage that and balancing the fleet, has to how Justin mentioned they are doing it at Zipcar. Thanks.
Yes, sure. So as you rightly said in the introductions, we're a B2B technology provider, and our platform enables mobility operators to launch and manage large fleets of shared vehicles as a service. So meaning they could be rent by the minute, by the hour, by the day, by the month. And this can take the form of car sharing, but also digital rental, car subscription, micro-mobility services, or all of these combined within one same service. We power about 20 million trips per year and have large-scale projects in about 50 cities around the world. And with that global footprint and 15 years of experience, so yes, we're an old startup now, we had already built a solid experience on how to reach profitability and success. But back in 2021, in a post-COVID world, we've decided to take that mission that we have at heart to one step further and launch our own car sharing program in the streets of Lyon metropolitan area. So it's a second city here in France, because we realized there was actually no better way, more relevant way to put ourselves in the shoes of our clients and bring them to the fastest way to that track of profitability. So we did that with 3 drivers in mind, launching a car of 300 and now 400 hybrid and electric cars. First, to learn, of course, to deepen our understanding of operations, just to better support our clients. Second, to test the breadth and depth of our mobility platform, continuously evolve it with new features that better serve the clients as well. And last but not least, demonstrate the growth potential of shared mobility and also the environmental impact that it has on this metropolitan area. So this is the rationale that led us to create Leo & Go, which is, by the way, in its name, a tribute to the Leo, the lion, the symbol, the animal symbol of the city. And yes, we are very happy to share that after 21 months back in June of operation, the project reached the milestone of profitability. So this has been achieved through a combination of course, acting to boost the top line. And we were speaking about the diversified programs or services that we offer within the same fleet to answer all mobility needs, whether it's going to the city, then another need if you need to go to the mountains on weekends. Justin talked about B2B. Of course, there's an emerging market over there. We have also a variety of vehicle models. Vans, for example, have a tremendous success for people who need to go to IKEA on weekends. So there's a smart mix of offline and online marketing, because yes, street marketing is not dead. There's also, of course, local partnership. I think it's very important. It has been important for us to play that local footprint card, if you will, to really win the hearts of the people over there, and not just appear overnight and hope that people would embrace the movement. And of course, acting on costs and optimizing them on a day-to-day basis. But even before that, we calculated that about 62% of the costs were actually made from pre-launch decisions. So it was the choice of the car models, really negotiate through an RFP the leasing plan, making choices when in-fleeting them. We did all that in one batch. What else? The insurance partner is also very important. So 62% again of this cost. And of course, then acting on a daily basis by, and sorry for the little ad for our mobility platform, but making sure that the fleet is optimized. So we have a small and mighty team of 3 and now 4 with a person for B2B, but 1 general manager, 1 marketing manager, 1 operations manager. This person is using the tool to, of course, better assess and optimize the agent's workload, the maintenance, car cleanliness, using it also to handle damage detection. This can have a big impact on costs. So, you know, by this 7 weeks, I would say we are there now and hoping for a same train over 2024.
I mean, that's great. Learning by doing is the best kind of learning. And clearly y'all are, entering into that space. And so you said 62% was the cost of acquiring the car and the insurance and those cost items. So that's a significant bit. And Justin and I have discussed that insurance can be a hindrance for many, car share companies. And talking of car cost headings, let me move to Anand next. So Anand is founded Halo. He's a computer science engineer with a master's in advanced software engineering. And he was running the perception teams at Uber's self-driving project before he founded Halo in 2019. Halo has built a proprietary and very reasonably priced tech for electric vehicles that enables a remote pilot to connect to the car and drive the vehicle on the road and deliver it to you. So, you book it. So it's fine. It's like Zipcar, you book the car, but you don't have to walk to the car comes to you, and then you just drive it like a regular car. So they are looking to reduce the cost associated with dead heading. And so Anand, just curious to hear your thoughts. Is that the key problem? Was that the problem you were looking to solve when you founded Halo? And are you looking to replace car ownership or Uber trips? Because these are 2 different things, right? Car ownership, like, Zipcar traditional model, one Zipcar probably takes off between, 8 to 12 cars off the road. So, I mean, looking to hear your thoughts on the cost of deadheading. How much of a cost is, say, insurance for y'all? And what market are you targeting here right now? And this can change, right? But right now, what's your game plan?
Cool, and thanks for having me here, and nice to meet everybody here. And Hyderabad is one of my favorite cities as well. Love the biryani there, so I'm missing that. So, anyway, so before I started this company, I was definitely involved in the self-driving space, and my thesis there is, what can we do to move the world away from gasoline cars to electric, and how fast can we actually do that? If all cars are autonomous and all cars are electric, yes, there's a huge impact that we can actually make, where we can now let go of this notion of car ownership and go to this transportation as a service model, but quickly realize that autonomy is going to take a very, very long time. So no matter what we say, what we do on press, it's just a very difficult problem to solve. It's arguably one of the most challenging problems to solve for mankind. So then I realized, okay, what's a practical solution? If you try to unpack this first principles basis, if you try to understand the cost of car ownership, $800 per month is average car ownership right now for customers. But when you buy a car, it's parked 96% of the time. We barely drive it, right? That's the whole point of how do we accelerate the adoption of car share itself? That's a thesis behind it. So if we now go towards electric vehicles, you're manufacturing this electric vehicle that takes hundreds of tons of carbon dioxide emission. And if you're actually making it to be parked, that makes no sense. So for every car we make today in America, we make 8 parking spaces with it. This is kind of crazy, right? So then car share is amazing. There are a few difficulties that I saw in car share. Right? I lived in Bay Area for a long time. I wanted to use car share all the time. But when you want a car, it's not next to you. You have to walk several blocks to get to the car. And when we get to the destination, you have to park somewhere and walk back again. If I click a button and the car can come to me, I will completely give up my car. I don't have to own a car anymore. That was the thesis behind starting this. Instead of solving car share, how do we accelerate the car share adoption? How do we make people move into a very economical, very convenient, and a phenomenal customer experience? That's all I wanted to provide for car share. If I can add that layer on top of car share, and the car happens to be electric, hey, beautiful. We solve so many different, birds in a single stone. That was the thesis behind it. And instead of solving autonomy, trying to boil the ocean to solve the last mile of delivering a car and collecting the car, why not just make a human drive it? I'm sure Zipcar folks are here. They see a massive cost in operations when you have to rebalance the fleet to not only for maintenance purposes, but also to increase utilization of your asset. It's a very difficult problem to solve. The only way we traditionally did it is people sitting in vans and driving them to the car. Then they get into the car, rebalance it to either manage the car and maintain the car or to increase the utilization. What if the car can just come to you, right? That's the vision. That's a eureka moment. And that's when I started this company saying, okay, let me just solve this massive problem of connectivity. That is, how can I make a remote operator that's sitting 100 miles away in a mission control? They can actually see everything around the car better than what we can see inside and drive it virtually to just deliver a car to the customer. It took us 5 years to unlock the stack. It was a very challenging problem to solve, but we've officially done it. And we've launched a full-fledged service right here in Las Vegas, which is getting a lot of traction with a lot of partners that are reaching out saying, how do we bring this to another country? How do we bring this to another dense environment? How do we put this in our fleet? So that's been very, very interesting. And also insurance. I know you mentioned insurance and the deadheading trips. I'd love to talk about that. So insurance is evolving, right? The insurance players are understanding that traditional model is car ownership, and you only give a per month fee for a car that is owned by one customer. And that model is drastically changing. Now we're working with insurance carriers that are saying, how do we insure by the minute or by the mile or by only drive time? When the car is parked, there's a different type of insurance, and the car is driving, it's a different type of insurance. We also collect a lot of low-level data when our customers drive. That is, how do they accelerate? How do they decelerate? How do they take a corner? Are they just doing donuts in the parking lot? So we know all of this. So we can actually insure per driver-based insurance. So this is an evolution of a brand new automotive industry that needs to evolve with our technology that needs to evolve alongside. The last one I want to kind of say regarding the deadhead trips, if you think about Uber, I come from Uber world, right? So one of the biggest costs for Uber is the driver inside the car. And one of the biggest costs for the driver that's inside the car is the deadhead trips. How much gas are they going to put to drive to get to one ride that's going to give them $9, right? This is a very difficult problem for them to solve. But instead of thinking about deadhead trips, what if we can think about it as a hub and spoke model? That is, fleets are organized all across the city, as close as possible, relatively close to the customer. Only when a request comes into our system, the car boots up automatically, a remote pilot connects to it automatically, and moves the vehicle just the last couple of miles to deliver the car to the customer. And what if we can rebalance the entire fleet overnight because we know when the demand is going to come in the morning? All these kind of benefits unlock when you don't have to have a human inside the car.
No, I think thanks for that. Couple of great points. I think one is EVs need to be driven more, because the more they're driven, they offset the massive carbon from the battery that they come out from the factory. And just some preliminary data for the LA County is EVs are 10% of the personal fleet, but only 3% of the VMT. So they are being driven like almost 1/3 is less as a regular car, which is not how it should be used. And I think the point on rebalancing costs, and not just for cars, even for a bike share, that's the largest cost component for bike share companies. So if you get a successful way to address that, then yeah, I think that's something great to pursue. So talking about different models, I'm looking at Andres here. So Andres is 5th generation running Grupo Ruiz in Spain. They are an old transport company, but they are diversifying into new mobility divisions such as car sharing, and they launched Minutes. And Minutes is extremely cool because I don't know how many of y'all have heard of the vehicle called the Carver. It is an extra, I put the link in the chat. It's this extremely cool microcar, which is what they use in Spain to run their car share fleet. So Andres, my question to you is, why did the Carver make sense to you? Is it because the microcar can be driven where a regular car cannot? Or is it just, the smaller footprint, less, it's more sustainable, more economical? So what are the USP and the disadvantages compared to a regular car? And what is the feedback you're getting from people who use it? Is it more tourists who are coming there who use it, or are the regular city folk who live there choosing to use the Carver for their trips around town? Because it's you know, it's fun, it's small, it's easy to zip around and easy to park. So over to you.
Thank you, Bhuvan, for the introduction and for your question, and thank you for all the MIT team for having me here today. Yeah, so indeed, we're very passionate about the Carver and about our service. We chose the Carver because we've been doing bus operations for over 130 years. We've always thought about our mission, which is to bring the best mobility solution for the biggest amount of people, right? So that started being about accessibility and equality, right? And once we were close to fulfill that, we started to look to other horizons, and we focused on just maybe some people that that bus transportation was not the best option for them, right? So maybe they just prefer to have a more flexible, agile, and personal option. So we went for the most different thing we found to a bus, which is massive, right? Which is collectively shared, and you are driven, to something very small, which you drive yourself, and which is the Carver, right? And since we're focused on urban areas with a lot of traffic and very big parking problems, so while we were studying the car sharing, we found that one of the biggest pain points was the stress you could find losing time and losing money in traffic, and also looking for a parking spot. Yeah. Right. So that's when we started to look around the market, and we found the microcar options, and especially the Carver. So the Carver allows you to move and flow through traffic, and also park in the same places where a motorcycle can park, right? Because it's an L2 EP, and also focused on thinking on the user experience, right? So that's one of the reasons why someone would not like to use a bus and like to use a different option. Well, we tried the Carver, and we fell in love with it, right? Because you feel like you're Valentino Rossi in in every corner, and more myself, because for example, motorcycles are also great options for highly congested areas, but they do require knowing how to use them, and they also have some other problems or pain points, such as the security or having to use a helmet, which are a problem when talking about sharing.
Yeah, no, I think those are great points. With in Boston, we've seen so much resistance to e-scooters. A couple of college campuses banned e-scooters. They said it was the battery issue. They said it was students riding them on sidewalks. But if we can address some of that through microcars, it's worth looking into. So I think that's good. That's a good development there. So I think I'm going to ask this question, and all of y'all can probably chip in. So it's a given that car sharing removes cars off the road. How much does it move the needle on VMT? So I'm a car share user. I use zip cars only on the weekend. Suppose I bought a private car, which I again only use on the weekends, and it lies parked. I get it. It's a very inefficient use of the parking space. It's an inefficient use of the car. Car sharing reduces number of parked cars. How much does it reduce VMT? Does it reduce it by 10%, or does it reduce it by as much it reduces private cars off the road? So Justin, I'm sure there's some research y'all have done on this. Happy to know your thoughts here.
Yeah, I would actually point people, knowing that I'm speaking to an audience of academics, to another academic study. Dr. Susan Shaheen at UC Berkeley has done some seminal research that has found that car sharing not only reduces vehicle ownership, Bob, and I think you mentioned this, between 9 and 13 vehicles per vehicle we put on the road, but also has a significant impact on VMT reduction and GHG. And a lot of that has to do with the induced demand of vehicle ownership. If you have sunk the cost in a vehicle that is sitting idle in your driveway or in your parking spot, you're disproportionately likely to use that as your preferred mode of choice. And we know that when you pay per trip, you are more discreet about your mobility choices. Our members in particular have a robust mobility menu that they draw from. They walk, they bike, they use public transit, and we have good findings on that we update annually based on our annual member surveys. And we know that that is highly correlated with an overall reduction in vehicle miles traveled across the board. But again, if you want to dive into the specifics, a lot of the seminal work was done almost a decade ago by Dr. Susan Shaheen at UC Berkeley.
Great.
Yeah,
Alexandra, anything? Yeah, go ahead.
Yeah, we have also done our second annual survey, and the figures show that, for example, 85% of the Lougovoy user are more likely to use clean mobility modes of transportation, so getting away from the private car. Interesting number as well is the fact that they are 60% and to be more than 2 people using the car. So it means that not only are you using a car sharing program, but you do it with other people, like carpooling within the car sharing. So it's also interesting that puts less private cars on the streets. And yeah, that's a calculation we've made for 1 shared car, 9 private cars are out of the streets, and that's 16K tons of CO2 emissions saved by the Lougovoy since its launch. So 3 interesting things that we've followed.
I can share something interesting. We don't have a huge fleet, right? So we don't have massive data like you guys. So we're just getting kickstarted. But one of the interesting things that we saw when we launched it direct to consumers was a lot of customers for us would find our service after they get into an accident. That is when the car goes to their mechanic for fixing or whatnot. That's when they really need a car. And the only way they would get a car, they could get a car in olden days, is go to the airport, get a rental car, whatnot. And then when the car comes to them, the whole aspect of convenience shifted for them. After the fact, once they use the service, they keep coming back over and over. Few customers that we've had already said that they want to give up their car and go towards the car share service. It's an interesting aspect when how convenience becomes a massive shift in how people think about moving away from private cars into a shared vehicle model. I just wanted to share that. It's a very interesting way we found how customers come to us.
So talking of traditional car, car rentals, Hertz was in the news recently for, selling off their Tesla fleet. So question to all of y'all, and the specific question to Andres here is, Carver is, it's still a nascent brand. It's not an established, player. And so do you have concerns of buying products, a fleet of 400 vehicles from a nascent player that, might not be around, say, tomorrow, like we've seen with many e-bike companies going bankrupt or something like that? And question to the rest of y'all, how are y'all managing, your fleet purchases given the volatility in the EV prices? They've fallen by 20-25% over a year. Is that causing concerns? And, we should have just bought a hybrid, or, let's stick to this and, take the hit on the, yeah. So, and maybe Andres will start with you on the concern on the Carver and because it's a very nascent market, right? The micro car markets. How do you hedge your risks here?
Absolutely, Bhuvan. Thanks for the question. Yes, this is something that you have to be aware of, because indeed it's absolutely nascent. There's not many options regarding microcars producers. It's true also that big manufacturers aren't interested in entering this market at this point. Nevertheless, we do believe in the strong partnership we have with our current manufacturer, and we absolutely believe in the model, right? So and once if the model works and there's a demand, then there's gonna be more options, right? And the model makes total sense. I mean, we see it, for example, in the bus transportation. We don't have the same buses for urban transport than for long distance transport. They're different. So it doesn't make any sense that we have the same cars for long distance, in which you would value, I don't know, comfortability and security and space. But for urban, you need other things. You need agility, right? So we do know, or we do believe that there's a space in the market for microcars that's going to be growing, because population is moving into the big cities. And also there's going to be more and more business coming into the sector, because also with EVs, there's also a lower barrier of entry into the production than with petrol engine cars, right? Because at the end you can outsource and into other companies, and also you can just the mechanics are simpler.
Thanks.
Maybe two or three things quickly. One is, we know car sharing is a social and environmental good, regardless of the powertrain of the vehicle. And I think that's important to underscore, right? For all the reasons that we mentioned, reducing vehicle ownership, reducing VMT. That being said, like at Zipcar, we're pretty bullish about the future of electrification and have taken a lot of steps, particularly over the last year, to really thoughtfully and with a member experience focused in mind, really deploy EVs across our fleet. And we've had a great deal of learnings. For most of our members, this is their first experience behind an electric vehicle. And so not only do we want them to have a good experience because it's a Zipcar, but we want them to have a good experience with electrification. And so we feel a really strong burden of responsibility to ensure that our members are well prepared, that we're doing our part to ensure that charging options are available. And while there are a lot of social issues that still surround the growth of adoption in EV infrastructure, we're really actively working with our partners to try to accelerate that and reduce that friction for our members. So I guess I would underscore that I think the future is really bright and we're bullish about that. But what we've tried to do is take a really deliberate, really focused, really thoughtful, and very member-centric approach to deploying EVs to ensure that they're a positive experience.
And what's the percentage of EVs in your fleet, Justin, if you can share, like?
Yeah, I can't comment on specifics, but I can say if you're a Zipcar member and you're based here in Boston, give us a try. You'll see them right in our app. We're today in 17 markets across North America with electric vehicles, with a big concentration in Boston. And a shout out if there's anyone here from the city, cities, universities have been incredibly strong partners with us in growing our electric vehicle emissions. So thank you for that.
Just want to add something quick there. Justin has fantastically put. EVs are hard for car share companies without a doubt. But the whole point of this 20% reduction in cost is only great for everybody in the equation, because now access to EVs becomes much more affordable. One of the biggest difficulties in the past was every EV is $40,000. How do you even get into buying that? Not everybody can afford a $40,000 car. In fact, car share companies, your debt is going to be so high, your rates right now are so high, affording a fleet of EVs is also like a big difficulties for big car share companies as well. And then one thing that we kind of saw recently when we started working with a lot of fleets is, how do you charge these cars? Because we don't have charging infrastructure on site, which means that somebody has to sit in the car, drive it a couple of miles, park it somewhere in some random parking lot, plug it in, wait in the car for 30 minutes for it to charge, and then drive it back. So these are interesting use cases that we're starting to see on how do we create this kind of infrastructure / rebalancing to make the infrastructure something much more impactful. So just adding a couple points there.
Thanks for that. Alexandra, any comments on the fleets and the cost of EV?
Yeah, we started with a third of fully electric vehicles, and the rest was hybrid. And yeah, speaking of learning points and things to improve, it's true that charging and maintaining those vehicles is slightly more difficult. We would go overnight in a commercial center to charge the electric vehicles. So yeah, clearly the infrastructure is not there yet in the metropolitan area of Lyon, and we had to downsize a little bit the EV portion of the fleet. So.
Yeah, but I mean, I think Justin made a great point. Car share as a business is more sustainable. So EV or IC or hybrid, I think it's good if it spreads all around. I'm cognizant of the time, and I'm seeing the chat is like super busy. So I'm going to ask Robin to probably unmute. Robin, do we have you?
Hi. Yeah. I just had a
Robin,
couple.
Thanks for joining.
Yeah.
So before you go, one question, and you can give your reflections. And my one question to you is, if you were founding Zipcar today, what would you do differently?
Nothing. Zipcar's been the same since it was founded 24 years ago. It's done the same stuff. What I felt was missing from this conversation, and you see it appear in the comments, is for us to recognize that car sharing is part of a multimodal lifestyle, and it's competing primarily against private cars. And when people are trying to match private car ownership, buy a single electrified vehicle, for me, that's not a good future for the world, for our cities, or for anything. So I think the future is a multimodal one where we choose the right vehicle for each trip, the right mode for each trip. And Zipcar needs to fit into that and figure out, make it easy and convenient, as well as cities doing their road planning and transit stations and who gets to park where and what lanes. All of that is part of the package, all of our taxes and regulations. So I feel like that was underrepresented in this piece. The other piece is people are asking, where does it work and where does it not work? Car sharing works in places where people don't need a car to get to work. If you need a car to get to work, you cannot use a shared car to do that, period. And so car sharing happens in places where there is a large enough density of people who don't need cars to get to work who will be using this service. Then just think about the internationalness of this, of who's on this call. It's interesting to reflect on who is driving that car. I grew up in the Middle East and I've traveled around the world in very many megacities. Where the cost of labor is low, you hire a driver as a taxi or a shuttle or whatever. And car sharing is really hard to happen there because it's cheaper to hire someone with their car to do it. Like, we don't need autonomous vehicles. They are effectively, low labor markets are effectively autonomous vehicles because the cost of labor is so low. So again, think about where it works and where it doesn't work. It has to be places where there's a robust multimodal method around yourself. University towns, I will include in that because you can walk to what you need. And we need to be the other piece, and I want to just, we have a little time and I want to make sure there's time for questions in general to the audience, from the audience, is I was thinking about why has car sharing in the last 23 years not grown explosively? And I think that is because we continue everywhere around the world to underprice the actual cost of car ownership and its cost to society. So people are comparing a heavily subsidized private car ownership to Zipcar, which is having to pay at least real costs of parking, and real costs of maintenance. But all of them, when they compete to other modes, are not having to pay congestion pricing, as in the cost of moving, real parking, what's coming out of your tailpipe, car crashes. I mean, all of those externalities are not built into private car ownership, and they should be built into all of the modes. And then I think we would rationalize how we use our roads, how we choose our methods. And I realize that's a pipe dream, but I think we're inching there little by little. And over the last 20 years, we have been. That's all.
Thank you so much, Robin, for that. John, in the little time that we have left, I'll pass the forum on to you.
Super. Well, as usual, the chat was extremely active. So let me just try to maybe summarize 3 sort of continuous streams of conversation that were happening. The first one was about sort of the balancing between taking cars off the street versus reducing parking spaces, the bigger question of, to what degree does car sharing actually address congestion? And these are really sort of complex and intertwined concepts. And I would simply invite any of the panelists, if they have further thoughts that they want to get across on that point, to do so. The second stream was about sort of, traditional internal combustion versus electric vehicles, caution and caveats about the impact of electric vehicles. What problems does an electric vehicle actually solve? I think we actually had a substantive conversation about that, so we don't have to touch too much more upon that. And then there was this third general stream about sort of induced demand and, how could we have to be cautious about sort of just bringing more and more people onto our streets. So just having said that cluster of ideas, are there any sort of further reflections from either of any of the 4 panelists on those concepts, particularly around parking versus having cars on streets?
I mean, I think I'll add one, which kind of knits together something Robin mentioned, which is the importance of recognizing that car sharing lives in a multimodal universe. And, what we found to be incredibly effective on the parking point is partnerships with cities that really place Zipcar not only in highly visible areas, but approximate to where people make transit decisions already. So near bike share or near subways. And we've worked with a number of cities that have really helped catalyze our growth into new areas, new markets, new parts of cities, new cities entirely as a result of that investment in parking. And I think it's actually quite helpful for residents to see that Zipcar or car sharing in general is normalized with other, private vehicle usage. Robin, I think I saw something in your chat, and you're right. Cities, particularly in the U.S., significantly discount parking for private vehicle usage. We don't price that properly in the road. And so one way to overcome that, if it's not on the disincentive, it's to provide incentives for people who join more sustainable, more options like car share with more accessibility that is on par with what cities already provide, often for free, which is private vehicle parking. So we've seen that to be an incredibly good investment of public policy resources to grow car sharing's adoption and consequently its impact.
I wanted to add a couple of things on that one. Robin put it incredibly well. It's transportation is multimodal all the time, right? Cars are one form of modality. So when we actually we engage with a lot of cities and policymakers and decision makers in the city itself, we always go to them and say, think of cars as another tool in the tool shed, not the tool shed itself, right? So it's very clear. Transportation is largely solved when people get into public transits as a bigger vehicle that can move a lot more people at once. The biggest difficulty is the last and the first mile of the public transit systems. In fact, the funny story here is I started the company to solve the first and last mile of getting people into public transit systems and getting them away from public transit systems. And it turned out to be such a complex problem for us to solve without scale. So we had to move towards car share. And then at volume, I think that we can achieve that vision where we have so many cars that are all dynamically moving. And hopefully, Robin, maybe in the future, we might be able to handle people moving from their house to work if we can push them into public transit systems.
Yeah. That integration with public transport is just an incredible opportunity to improve our overall mobility system. I want to just mention, so Kara Kokelman is on the line with us. And Kara, if you have any further, I know you've looked at a lot of these issues. If you want to maybe jump in with a few comments.
First of all, John, it's Kara, like a vehicle, beep, beep. Yeah, my parents were very prescient. I don't know how they knew I was going into this field, but yeah. And I was just typing in there to somebody about the fee-based policy. They were mentioning that it really probably emphasizes purchase rather than use, and that's incredibly accurate. But that's the point at which we get the buyer's attention, and so it makes a huge, 15-year decision for us on the fuel economy, which is super important. So I do like a fee-based policy. I think we need it now. We needed it decades ago. And yeah, we also need a very high gas tax. So that's what I was typing in there. But yeah, my webpage will give people lots of information on shared vehicles, especially the autonomous vehicle fleet. So we don't have to trust that the driver will do what we tell him or her to do. And so there's less empty VMT, but deadheading is definitely a problem, and fleet size and geofencing decisions and pricing all make a huge difference, and especially on getting people to share the rides, because you need that delta to be big for most Americans. They're kind of ambivalent about lots of excessive fees that they pay these days. If it happens through the phone, they don't, notice it as much. Although I think most of us on the line keep both TNCs on our phone, and we do check them both before we order a ride. And I just wish we had the pooled option like Uber Pool and Lyft Line. Hardly ever find that these days. Very few cities and very few rides seem to offer that these days.
May I? Can I jump in for one question?
Yeah, go ahead, Jamar.
So it's about the weight and the size of the car getting bigger and bigger over time, right? From the private ownership side, I don't see any motivation for the car makers to make cars smaller, because customers want to buy it, and so I build it. My question to you guys is, from a car sharing point of view, do you have the desire to guide the customer experience or preference towards a more efficient, smaller form vehicles.
I mean, I'm happy to give it a shot. I think for us, what, today you will find about 50 different makes and models across the Zipcar fleet. And we found that to be valuable for a number of different reasons, but in part to help address the varying use cases that our members need a vehicle for. So Genoa, as an example, if one of our key use cases is people moving furniture, they might actually need a van for that or need a larger form factor of vehicle for that. The vast majority of the vehicles in our fleet are like efficient, relatively medium or small size vehicles. But I think one of the things that we know about car sharing is that our trips are very purpose driven, which is to say that, someone has a specific or explicit use case in mind when they're booking that vehicle, and they've already determined that the vehicle is the right mode for that trip. Otherwise, they would have used transit, they would have walked, they would have biked, they would have chosen another option. And I think for us, it's largely about ensuring that we have the make models that are available to our members that meet the needs of that specific use case. I'm not sure if that fully answers your question, but that's one of the ways in which we
at least I think if you buy a car, you may err on the scenario where even it's very occasional, you buy the big one just in case. But with the sharing potential, at least you can make a decision on the trip basis rather than on the oversized basis.
Can I jump in there? We have seen now in some cities and states where they are finally charging fees of ownership and parking and registration based on vehicle size and weight. And we absolutely should be getting towards that. And I look at congestion pricing in New York, and I think that was kind of a missed opportunity. When I think about congestion pricing anywhere or replacement of our fuel taxes, they should absolutely include that. So there is an incentive. I had this sentence I give in talk that talks that mayors and states they express ambivalence whether I take my bike or a Hummer on the street because they don't seem to care. They don't charge me for those different externalities. And there isn't ambivalence. There's a strong preference, but they are not demonstrating that in almost any way.
John, back to you. Any further?
There are three questions, really great questions that I want to highlight. We don't have time to get to all of them, but Tara Weidman had asked, what happened to one-way car sharing? Why did Car2Go not work out? I think that's a really important question to address, and maybe it will work out in the future. Stephanie Grohl had said, what cities have successfully reduced car ownership and how? So what are the best sort of models out there? Joe Conroy had asked, what data are car sharing companies willing to share to enable smarter and better cities? Maybe just in the last minute that we have, Stephanie, on the question of what cities, obviously Paris comes up a lot, Mayor Hidalgo's policy. Now you're the token Parisian on the call today, or at least individual from France. Can you maybe give a reflection on everything that's been happening in Paris and how that sort of fits in? What are the lessons learned?
Yes, a vote has just been done to charge much more the SUVs for their parking fees. So that's just another example. But yeah, Paris, such as Stockholm or Madrid, they're doing a lot to have more pedestrians and friendly city zone with low emission centers, banning certain types of non-climate friendly cars in the streets. So there's a lot being done, and we need to work closely with town halls, with the local authorities, and that's also what we've done for Lyon. It's actually a green town hall that is there, and they are doing RFPs to welcome car sharing services. And when they do that, when you get the label, you also have, for example, the free parking spots for your users. So that's an example of incentivization that helps with the adoption.
Perfect. I thank you. I think the example from France is the best way to end today's session. So everybody, please join me. Thank the panel. I thank Vulog, John, and also Robin and Cara joining us as well. Thank you guys, and see you next Friday for the EV training.